McClay picks up his history after the turbulent 60s by focusing on three presidents: Richard Nixon, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan. He starts out by talking about Nixon and how Nixon wanted to change the way that Americans practice their life, to return to a more common sense normalcy that would define who we are, that would create balance, that would bring peace to American society. So here we have to understand that Nixon is dealing with the context of the Vietnam War. How can we get out of Vietnam? How can we end this national nightmare and move forward? Now, Nixon was very, very much influenced by the German political scientist Henry Kissinger. And Henry Kissinger was a 19th century European historian who believed that the key to peace was balance. Stop thinking about the world moralistically. Stop taking into account your aspirations of justice. Kissinger might have argued that that's what got us into Vietnam in the first place. Yes, if you want to counter communism, that's one thing. But don't try to create a world that replicates who you are. Don't try to take your national aspirations and export them abroad. Work in the world as a chess player. Work in the world as a balancer of power. And when you do so, you may not be overly moralistic, you may not make the world more just, but at least you can create a balance that is satisfactory for the people in your society. Well, Nixon, heeding these words, heeding these ideas of amoralism, retreats from Vietnam and tends to the shop in D.C. and maintaining power and creating a Republican majority. He in many ways gives in on economic fronts to a variety of different extensions of the Great Society program. But at the end of the day, his amoralism will also trip him up. We have Watergate. We have a scandal in which, in going through the Democratic National Office and being part of a scheme to rig the election, Nixon undoes all of his efforts. What's the lesson here? To practice amoralism may work to some degree in world politics, but at the end of the day, your character matters. Which leads us to the president after Nixon, Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, a peanut farmer from Georgia who had been governor of Georgia, who comes forward and says, I am everything that Nixon was not. I am a simple person. I am a Christian. I am humble. All I want to do is tend to what is right and good, and we will do so by practicing a type of justice, by recovering kind of that original spirit of who America is. But Carter falls upon hard times. He's unable to overcome, through his policies, the economic inflation of the day. He's unable to overcome stagnation. He's unable to overcome the foreign policy abroad as the Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. One after another issues, Carter is found to not be up to the challenge, and most importantly, not up to the challenge of restoring a sense of morale within the American people. After Vietnam, we need to be confident about who we are once again, and Jimmy Carter is unable to do that, which leads to the third president that McClay covers in the chapter, Ronald Reagan. Why is Reagan special, according to McClay? Reagan had the ability to inspire. He had the ability to telegraph confidence to other Americans. This morale, this hope, almost like the political equivalent of a Rocky movie, where we're fighting, we're getting better, we're struggling to move on after Vietnam, where we can create morning again in America. That's a feeling that Reagan exudes to people. So his policies matter, his economic policies of liberalization, of lowering regulation, lowering taxes, and all the rest, they have an important impact on the country. His foreign policy of a strong anti-communist stance has an impact on world affairs. But at the end of the day, what made Reagan special was his ability to communicate a sense of hope and aspiration to a country that is defined by its hope and aspiration.